Thank you for your warm introduction on this beautiful Ballarat Winter's Day. So thank you. It's lovely to be here. And I want to also thank Compassion Ballarat for your work in helping us to become a more compassionate city. Keep it up. And thank you to each and everyone joining us this morning, wherever you are. I send you my warmest wishes, light and love to you all. I join Lynn in acknowledging the Wuthering people of this cooling nation and pray respects to their elders, past and present and emerging. When COVID-19 happened, experts encouraged us to maintain a daily routine, which involves physical exercise, eating and sleeping well, looking after our mental well-being through social connection, even as we remain physically apart. But not many spoke or speak about spiritual care, which to me completes the triangle. So what I want to offer this morning, as Lynn had alluded earlier, is that human beings are a unity of body, and we know how to care for our bodies. You know, we have physical exercise, balanced and nutritious diet. And Maria Marshall, dwelt on that last Wednesday, which was beautiful, and I learned a few things myself. We also know the benefits of good sleep. We also a unity of body, and we know how important it is to study and engage in intellectual pursuits and healthy relationships and connections, as well as the importance of what we read and what we watch. But also, we are people with spirits and souls, and we need silence, solitude, and prayer in order to care for our souls and our spirits. I learned this through a young woman called Eti Hilesum, who really taught me 8 years ago that holistic health must include the care of the three. Eti was a young Dutch Jewish girl who died in the horrors of Auschwitz during the Second World War, and she was only 29. When many people were losing their faith in God and in human beings, Eti actually found God, not in the buildings of the church or synagogue or mosque, and I don't think he attended any church or synagogue or mosque or temple, but actually she found God and her deeper self through silence, solitude, and prayer. By looking inward, she discovered her true self. And she wrote that the body and soul are one, and that the inner world is as real as the outer one, and both need care. The inner world is as real as the outer one, and both need care. I want you this morning to encourage you not only to care for your outer world, but also to care for your inner world. As a society, we don't often encourage one another to care for our souls and our inner world. I hope what I'm saying to you this morning will help you, to encourage you, and to give you some disciplines on how you might be able to care, not only for your outer world, but also for your inner world. And I want to offer you 3 ways that we can care for our spiritual well-being: through silence, solitude, and prayer. We feel threatened by silence, and we live under the dictatorship of noise. We know with our technology-driven society how sometimes it's so difficult to find a place of silence. I know there are lots of benefits with technology, but also lots of abuses. I want to encourage you this morning to learn to befriend silence. Simone Weil, a friend of silence, she once said, "Our soul makes constant noise, but it has a silent place we never hear." I invite you this morning to that silent place, the space in us where we are loved, valued, innocent, at home, true, free, and grounded. When we learn silence and have the discipline of silence, we really come to know that we are all lonely, but we are not alone. The more we befriend silence, the more we realize that our soul connects us intimately with all that exists. The whole world is inside us, and we are in the whole world. Thomas Merton, one of the greatest spiritual writers of the 20th century, said this about solitude. We are in solitude when we fully taste the water we are drinking, feel the warmth of our blankets, and are restful enough to be content inside our own skin. When was the last time that we fully tasted the water we were drinking? Or the coffee that we drank this morning? Did you taste your coffee? When was the last time that we were restful enough to be content inside our own skin? Prayer. We are funny sometimes about prayer, and we think it's something that religious people do, or something that monks do, or something that we do when we don't have anything else to do. But actually, Etty Hillesum was a person who really taught me the deep meaning of prayer, and she was one who never went to an institutional church. And this is what she says. She says, there's a well deep inside me, and in that well dwells God. Sometimes I'm there, but most often the well is covered by sand, dirt, and stones, and God is hidden. Then God must be dug out again. What a beautiful image of prayer. Uncovering the God that dwells deep in our hearts. Spiritual care is not an exclusive reserve of religious people. My invitation this morning is to say to each and everyone listening that just as we care for ourselves physically, we do exercises, we go to yoga, we go to the gym, and now gradually as a society, we are understanding how important our mental well-being is. And we're quite happy now for people to own up to their mental struggles, and we all struggle mentally. And it's good to see that all the taboos are falling when it comes to mental illness. And we still have a long way to go in caring for each other. I think when we are done with our mental well-being, the next stage in our evolution will be really caring also for our spiritual well-being. And I really want to encourage you to do that. So what are the benefits of what I'm saying this morning? The first benefit of what I'm offering you through silence, prayer, and solitude is that when you care for your spiritual well-being, you have what I call holistic health, as Etty said. And our well-being is not just something that we do for our bodies and for our minds. We also begin to care for our souls as well. When I have my counseling clients, or guests as I call them, I don't call them clients, I give them what I call 30-30 therapy, 30 minutes of physical exercise every day, and 30 minutes of meditation and prayer. And I'll encourage you to do the same, maybe for the next 30 days. 30 minutes every day for physical activity, and 30 minutes every day for some time for yourself in prayer and meditation. Then we develop a heightened awareness of our interconnectedness, both human and other than human. You can only see what's happening around the world with Black Lives Matter to see that if we don't have peace, it's because we've forgotten that we belong to each other. When we care for ourselves spiritually, we begin to see that I live in you and you live in me, that we are all interconnected. There is no us and them, just us, we, one human race. It helps us accept our vulnerability. You know the writings of Brené Brown, and she's written so much about vulnerability and how that's what we all have in common, our vulnerability. Wouldn't that be a more compassionate world when we all accepted each other's vulnerability? Spiritual care enables you to sing your own song, self-acceptance and proper self-love. In the prison about 3 months ago, I met one of the prisoners and I was talking to him, a wonderful young man who just made a mistake. And he said to me, Constantine, before I came to prison, I didn't like who I was. But now in prison, I can look in the mirror and I like who I am. What a wonderful thing. And I said to him, you know what, David? So many people outside cannot say what you just said, that when they look in the mirror, they actually like who they see. Deep within you is written your own song. Sing it with all your heart. That's really my message to everyone this morning. Deep within you is written your own song. Sing it with your heart. Spiritual care reduces the tendency to always compare ourselves with others, to compete with others, or to want to be others. The more we care for ourselves spiritually, the more we build communion, less competition, more community, more compassion, more humanity. A more peaceful, humane, kind, ecologically aware, and compassionate world. Isn't that what we all want? Isn't that what we are learning during this time of COVID chaos? I want to finish with a poem by Melissa Shaw Smith. She said, "This year has rocked this world to its roots. What if for one day each being put down their burdens, their words of hate, their inhumanity, and breathe in the presence? Stopped fighting for history, for fears, hopes, dreams, and stood facing the morning sun, letting the warmth of the moment and the next, accumulate like dust at their feet, listened instead of spoke, acknowledged truth, embraced silence. What if for one day each being acknowledged the fear and let it go, suspended beliefs, opened their arms, drew strength through earth, grass, rock, sand, found the sparrow singing from a lone bush, the small heart-shaped cloud, felt the currents of air wash over them, mingle with the breath, and let the seams unravel, borders blend, walls dissolve, and be one. What if we can live a world where our children and their grandchildren feel this heightened awareness of our interconnectedness, where we learn to accept our vulnerability, where we learn to accept ourselves and accept other people, where we reduce the tendency to compete, but rather build community, compassion, empathy, love, and kindness. So my friends, I offer you those small, simple reflections. It's not complicated what I've just said, but I think it's actually quite difficult to actually practice them. So I do encourage you to make more time for silence. That's where we really find strength, in silence. And then through solitude and through prayer, as Eti said, we learn to care not only for our outer world, but also for our inner world. So thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you, Constantine. That was just beautiful, and it's, really reminds us the importance of wrapping ourselves with love and, as you say, kindness, particularly at these times. It's a very unsettling time, and you and I spoke before this about being held in this liminal space between one thing and another, and how we manage that. And I wondered if you just wanted to speak a little bit about this being held in this space almost of transition, and your thoughts about what we take back into the world from this time.
I think it was Jane Goodall that I saw earlier on when COVID happened. She posted a Facebook thing about what we're learning from what is happening. She said that we're really learning that what really matters is family, relationships, community, love. That all these other stuff we make the big things are really not the big things. We've seen how, the economy that does not put the human being at the center is really not worth it. So one of the things I think we can learn is to put the human person at the center of economic policy, of whatever policies we're having, whatever we're doing, the human being. The only real recession I think that will happen at the end of all of this is we go back to an economy that puts money at the center. I think that will be the real recession. So I really think that for all of us, that the human person is at the center. And when we put the human person at the center, look at all the decisions the government had to make, it's all about human beings, job keeper, job seeker, all of that, with childcare. I mean, where did they find the money? I mean, they could have done all this before. I mean, suddenly the money came because of this, of the challenge of COVID. So we must put the human being at the center of the economy, not money, not selfish interests of some groups. I think that's the new normal that I want to see as we emerge from this liminal space, is that the human person becomes the center of everything we do, and not just a selfish interest.
Yeah, lovely. And I've got a question here about, Mary says, the dictatorship of noise. What a wonderful phrase, one to remember. Do you have any thoughts on how we can unplug from our noise and enter our own silence?
I say to young people, their phones has a switch off button. They should use it more often. And a remote controls has got a red button on the top that says off. I think that's one of the practical ways I say to young people is, it's about the discipline of often switching off our gadgets. I mean, as I said, there are wonderful things about our gadgets, and we've used it a lot during this time of isolation to connect with family and with friends. But I think too much of everything is also not good for us. One of the ways I suggest, Mary, is to learn the discipline of switching off gadgets, phones, computers. Sometimes I leave my phones at home to go for my morning walk. I don't take it. I don't listen. I listen to the sound of the birds when I go for my walk. So it's simple things like that, simple practices, but the discipline of doing them is, I think, what's important, to learn sometimes to go without telephones or without, television or without social media, just the intentional ways of doing that, switching them off so that we can have that interior silence to look after inner world. I think that's one of the ways. It's something simple, but it's practical. Is learning to switch off the gadgets, just to have the me time, the silent time, to listen to what is really happening in our inner world, as Eti Hillesum has said.
Well, I think we have to value it first. I know when I was learning meditation, and I knew that when I did it, I was, my world just worked so much better. But it was getting to it that's really important. And
yes.
How we remind ourselves, as you say, even write down, for the next 10 or 30 days, I'm going to do 10, 30 minutes of meditation and walking. And so it's just bringing ourselves, it is a discipline, I think, to...
it does, yeah.
And also it requires us to put ourselves, as you were saying, put this part of our growth and our experience in life, our life experience, that this is an important part to nurture.
There is another question here. Can you see, Lynn?
Yeah, do you see the rise of mental health as a response to spiritual hunger and need to connection?
I think so. I think there is a connection. I think that we are made for community. We are made for relationships. I come from Africa, from Nigeria. We have a saying in Africa, actually two sayings. The first proverb is, we are human together. It's called Ubuntu. And the other one says, when the toe is hurting, the whole body bends down to look after it. When your toe is hurting, your whole body bends down to look after. Isn't that beautiful? I mean, you think your toe is not important until you stub your toe, and then you realize what happens. Your whole body bends down to actually tend to it. So I see that as really what happens in our society. That because often we forget that we belong to each other. I think loneliness, fragmentation, isolation is really about not realizing that we belong to each other. And the more isolated we are, the more mentally sick that we become. And I think we must find ways to care for our toes. My friend used to say to me, when you have a pot plant that is not working well, you don't blame the pot plant, do you? You try and find out why it's not working. You tend to it, give it more sun, give it more water. Why is it that with human beings we do the opposite? We blame them. I think we must learn that mental illness really is about listening to people and asking what happened to you, what went wrong in your life. It's also not about medicalizing problems too. We tend to medicalize mental health problems, and experts will talk about what's wrong with you. Rather than what's wrong with you, we must ask what happened to you and how did it affect you? How can we help you? And how can we listen to make your life better? We need to change our conversations when it comes to stuff like that. And then that will make it more normal for people to speak about their mental distress and we can help them. So it has to be peer-to-peer support as well and a lived experience too. But all of that has to be in the context of more connection and a community approach rather than a medical approach to how we care for people with mental illness.
Yes, that's right. And I can see that Merle saying that, that she loves that phrase, putting the human person at the centre. And yeah, is it our legitimate role to fight against injustice, she asks.
Yes, I think so. Martin Luther King Jr. said life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? I think sometimes in our society, bad things happen is because good people keep silent. Uh, Sometimes we're not angry enough at injustice to stop it. If we're angry enough at, for example, indigenous issues, rather than just talking about indigenous people, if we're angry enough that they are not recognized in our constitution, that they have as a higher rate of suicide in their communities and more of them in prisons and a lot of them die in custody. If we are angry enough about that, we must end it. We must do something. I think it is our role to fight against injustice when we stand up for those who have no one to stand up for them. And I think that's our role. We must do that in a good way, vote people in who can do that for us, be involved in policy making, contribute, write letters to our members of parliament, speak out. But because a lot of people keep silent, I think that's part of the reason why bad things continue to happen. I think we all have to stand up to and be counted because we belong to the same human family. What affects one affects all. We must really do our best. And I think anger is not aggression or hate, as somebody is asking. Is what they call righteous anger. The anger that you channel into a positive action. Hate and aggression goes into negative action where you trash things or loot and do the wrong thing. That's not what I mean. That's what they call righteous anger, where you are angry at what has happened. I looked at George Floyd, for example, and I cried watching the daughter and the wife speak about his absence in their lives. And I said to myself, Constantine, imagine your daughter not being able to see you because someone did something to you that they shouldn't do. That made me angry. And that made me want to do things better for other people. It didn't make me want to go and thrash things or hate people or kill them, no. It made me want to make sure that I live in such a way that I right the wrongs of history and make sure that people are loved and cared for and valued, not because of the color of their skin, but because of who they are.
And I wondered, just to finish perhaps, was your experience of setting up the shower bus. Tell us about how that happened and what you saw that required, that you really wanted to make a difference by developing and putting this shower bus of making it available for people in Ballarat?
Thank you, Lynn. That's a good question. We actually never set out to start a shower bus. It happened because a homeless person knocked on my door about 5 years ago, needing a place to stay on a cold Ballarat night. And then I gave her an accommodation behind the rectory where I lived in Beckery Hill. And then when she was there, I discovered, the following day that she didn't have any place to have a shower. I couldn't bring her into my house because that's against the professional standards. And then I was asking her, where do you have showers? And she said, oh, sometimes we go to Uniting, but it's only from 9 to 4. I said, what of after hours or when you want to have showers? And she said, no, we don't. And then I noticed also that when I lived close to her, that the first thing you notice about homeless people is that they smell. I don't know whether you've been close to homeless people. I think that's part of it. They don't have that readily access to showers. They can go to the public toilets. So that's what made me think. And then I Googled homeless showers. And then I found that in some places in America and even in Australia that they were having mobile showers for homeless people. So that's how we started. And we started the process here in Ballarat. So it was really the simple answer that I came into contact with a homeless person. I encountered a homeless person, and that made me think about why they didn't have showers. So I guess with everything, when it comes to issues of injustice, we must encounter people. And I think that's how we learn to fight against injustice, by being close to people. I think in being close to people, you realize what their needs are, and then you try and do something. Mary McKillop had a beautiful saying. She said, never see a need without doing something about it. Never see a need without doing something about it. So we saw a need, and then we tried to do something. And the community of Ballarat were fantastic. A lot of it were donated, labor, skills, money. Amazing, the generosity of Ballarat people in trying to get that up and running. So it's wonderful community project as well.
Yes, well, I think SBS is running Filthy Rich and Homeless on tonight, started last night, and you can see the experience of people that thought they knew or felt that they were connected to the homeless, but when they're homeless themselves, the experience is just life-changing, really. So yes, we really, I think that action is a very important part. It's not just seeing the suffering, but taking resourced action to alleviate that suffering. And indeed, that is the definition of compassion. So that's a wonderful note to end on. And thank you so much, Constantine. That's been just a beautiful session. Really appreciate your time and wonderful thoughts to share with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. My pleasure.
Good. And next week we will be joined by Dr. Mary Hollick. Mary's an adjunct research fellow at Fed Uni, and as a carer herself, she will be speaking about caring for the carers. Looking after someone with a physical or mental disability certainly hasn't been easy in this time of physical distancing, particularly when a lot of the services that are normally available haven't been running. So Mary's going to be drawing on her lived experience and on some of the latest research in her presentation. So please join us next Wednesday at 11:30. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Constantine. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Bye-bye.